And we've got a big surprise for you, Kate. She was doing the show. I didn't know I was on the show. It's your old friend John. And I walk on, and Kate Bush and I meet for the first time on French television. They told her it's John Wolfe, her old pal, and it's me. And that was embarrassing. She went, well, he's my friend now. You know, it was great. It was great, but, you know, publicly.
What a way to meet.
What a way to meet. Yeah.
On TV.
And she went, Jack, she was coming, Jack, first thing you got to do is stop doing this. Well, I used to do this thing that Gillan did with he pushed to go, yes, big thing. And the audience said, do it, you go crazy. And she imitated me doing it. She said, first of all, Jack, you got to stop doing that.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
John Parr, welcome to Virgin Radio and Virgin Radio 80s Plus. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. And you?
I am in love with that hair.
Yeah.
I've seen it over the years and through the decades, but it's there in person. It's got a personality of its own.
Has,
Look at
it's
it.
got a life of its own as well, believe me.
I'm only jealous. Look at me. The hair's legendary. Does it take a long time? First question.
No. Absolutely not. You know, it's like, I remember going to a wedding in Switzerland and somebody said, I bet he spent longer on his hair than the bride did. And I literally do that. Put a bit of gunk on it and that's it. No, well, I don't even blow dry, nothing.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
You.
Thank you so much for being here. Your tracks are incredible, as you would expect. You're an amazing artist. There's so many things I want to ask you, but we'll go straight into Don Henley, Boys of Summer. Why have you picked this one?
It was one of those songs, you hear it on the radio in the car and you pull over and, you know, that record, Building the Perfect Beast, you know, just blew me away. I mean, he's kind of an idol of mine, Don Henley. I've followed him all the way through the Eagles. I remember doing a thing for the BBC and, you know, that was it called Never Mind the Buzzcocks?
Yeah.
You know, where they dress you up and they have to go, is that him?
Yeah.
And I used to have my own designer clothes then. But the BBC dressed me up in their version, so I was in like a Billy Cotton band show band leader's jacket, funny trousers and shoes. And I went to my dressing room and Don Henley was standing there in the neck. And I tried, you know, one of those things where you're bumbling for words. And
Yeah.
I was dressed as, you know, Billy Cotton band show guy. That's my Don Henley connection.
Yeah. Did you say hi?
I did say hi, and I said, my wife's a big fan. I said, Mr. Henley, my wife would die. And he went, I sincerely hope not.
And you said Boys of Summer is like the perfect song. I mean, I would absolutely hit back at you and go St Elmo's Fire is another one. It just one of those songs that is just so perfectly well rounded.
Yeah, we were in you know, kind of right in the mid 80s. The bar was set very high. There was a lot of amazing records, not just songs, but the production. Everything was like really kind of, you know, pole vault level, you know.
Okay. Well, we'll get on to St Elmo soon. Excuse me. I just want to... our next song is Toto. Toto, Rosanna. This is, you know, it must be really kind of slightly problematic for Toto that everyone thinks, you know, brings up Africa as soon as they're mentioned. But there are other tunes, aren't there? Yeah,
I remember early 80s, the van had blown up and so had the band. My wife was paying the bills. I was just at home writing songs. And our treat every month would be to buy an album. And we bought Toto 4. And I cried. I played the record as that song of Lou Cather singing, you know, I won't hold back now. And it just brought me to my knees. And I thought, I'm trying to break through here. I can't compete. This music is just so incredible. And then life does one, and 18 months later I'm on the road with them. We become friends. They even played on St Elmo's Fire, you know.
How did you meet them then? How did that
I literally toured. It was my first tour of America, and they asked me to tour with them.
So how old were you at this stage?
I was 32.
Right.
They were so kind. I mean, obviously we know every member's name in that band, and they just introduced them. Hi, I'm David Page, as if I didn't know. Jeff Porcaro and Steve Lukather, we became great pals. Jeff played on a couple of my records, you know. But as I say, you know, there's little old me in Doncaster 2 years earlier thinking, never. And then it all happened.
And what was that tour like? Can I take you back to that? So that would have been like early 80s.
It was 1984, right. 5, and we were playing 10,000-seater. A lot of college, they call them college stations in America, where they're kind of basketball arenas, and 10,000 people. Obviously, Toto were the biggest band in the world then. And they gave me time, you know. I remember you do the sound check and they went, well, we'll stop now, we'll give John half an hour to sound check. It would never happen. And they were just so great, and you know, well, the rest is history. We know just how wonderful they were, and all those great songs, right from Hold the Line right through, you know.
Mm-hmm. Was it wild? Was it a wild experience?
No,
no,
it wasn't wild, because I'm sure it was for them, but I travel on the bus with them, so I travel with Stephen and on the bus and do my show. But after the show, my manager and I would drive through the night to the next gig in a car to do my press for the next day before the gig. So I missed all the kind of rock and roll, you know, with the odd exception.
Yeah.
But I generally missed all that because I was driving through the night.
You must have, that must have been such a growing up fast experience for you.
It was. I mean, I was an old head on young shoulders even then. Me and my dad were real close, so I was already real grown up, you know, and my work ethic was very strong, and being a singer, you know, and the kind of songs I sang, which were very athletic, you know, I had to be on the money, so I couldn't really, I couldn't cane it, you know, and there was that. But nonetheless, being in America for the first time as a kid from the north of England, we watched all those shows, you know, and all those great detective things, and suddenly I'm in the midst of all those places, all those names.
Yeah.
And it was like in the midst of the 80s, which was the 60s all over again, wasn't it? It was just this explosion of everything larger than life.
What blew you away? Can you remember something you thought, wow?
Yeah, I can remember coming over Los Angeles at night for the first time and just seeing that carpet of light from high up. You know, I'd never seen a landscape of that many lights that were, you know, just indescribable, really. I had a great moment, remember flying into New York once in the daytime, and that's spectacular as well. And the pilot, it was St Elmo's, and the pilot saying over the tannoy, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got John Parr with us today, and he's #1 in America."
Oh,
and that was literally a year after being nowhere, and I'm thinking, man, just for this 1 week, I'm where everybody wants to be.
Brilliant. And why have you picked Rosanna, by the way?
I picked Rosanna just because of the boys, really, and because it's got Jerry Hay on there, so all those that's the same brass section that played St Elmo's Fire.
Right, okay.
You know, same guitar player. It's just, and they're pals, you know.
Yeah. The next song's Bette Midler. I just want to take you back to right at the start of your career. Is it true that you started in your first band aged 12?
Yeah.
That's
for
amazing.
Money.
Really?
For money, 12, yeah. I was playing before that, but the Worksop Miners Welfare, we got paid 6 guineas in the day. Nobody knows. That used to be £1 and a shilling, so it'd be about £1.05p. But that was 6
That was
guineas.
the first ever gig.
First ever gig, and that was like playing the London Palladium to a kid in my town. That was where everybody played. It was wild.
What were you playing at that first gig?
Material, or what instrument-wise do you mean?
Yeah, both.
I was guitar player, singer, lead singer. And we were playing the songs of the day, and you were measured in those days. It had to be covers. Play Some Up We Know. It was not, you know, play my
the
own
hits.
song. Yeah, play the hits, and you were measured on how well you could mirror those records. As a songwriter, it's the greatest training in the world, because you learn from the masters all those wonderful songs. You learn how they're made, how they're put together. So, as a kid, I was a sponge, and so
you always knew what you wanted to do. You always knew that you had the music kind of vibe running through your veins.
It was. I felt cursed with ambition. It sounds a funny mixture of words, but I always felt different and felt there was something inside. But I felt really trapped in my little mining town that nobody'd really escaped from. You know.
Yeah.
And there was no internet. There was nothing. You know. And it was Top of the Pops. That was it. And it was like looking at Mount Olympus. You know, and thinking, how am I going to get there? But there was something in me that felt, I need to get there. Mm-hmm. It was a long time coming.
Just remind me how much that was, the first gig. 12 guineas, that would have been how much?
6 guineas.
6
guineas, so it would have been £6.30.
And Bette Midler, Wind Beneath My Wings. Tell me about this track, because it's beautiful.
2 funny stories. My friend, Dave Mackay, great record producer, he was in LA, and they said, we've got to pick my mate up on the way. They were going to a show. And the guy got in the car, he said, I've just been writing with my mate today. Have a listen. He put the cassette in. It was Wind Beneath My Wings. They'd written it. And Dave said, as soon as I heard it, it was wonderful. And of course, when Bette sang it, it was just something. Bette Midler kind of epitomizes the hard way, doesn't she? The journey through.
Yeah.
She's done everything. One sad thing in my own life, I was signed with Atlantic, and as my career took off, they asked me to produce Bette's album. They said, would you produce the album? And stupidly, I didn't know so much about her then, and thought, no, it's not for me, and I regret it to this day. Cause
wow.
Could you imagine being able to spend that time with Bette and to have, tried to craft something special,
Did you ever meet her? Did you ever hang out with
Never met.
her?
It was just, we shared the same A&R guy, Richard Steinberg, and Richard said, I think he said, Bette likes what you're doing. How do you feel about producing it? And I went, and again, it was early days for me. I was in my early 30s, and being 30 as a pop star, a rock star, it's quite old to start. And I was thinking, man, how long is this going to run for? I'd just better get my nose to the grindstone and focus on me. Mm-hmm. But I regret it, because I think I would have learned so much, and it would have been a life experience.
Do you have many of those things where you look back and you go, oh, if only I'd done this? Because you've achieved amazing success, but do you still have things that you wish you'd done at the peak of fame?
It's that sliding door thing, isn't it? That movie, Peter Howitz. You think I could have gone down that road. I could have gone. I can tell you one road I remember very early on. Signed my deal with Atlantic, and they saw me as their new kind of leather-clad rock and roller. They'd just lost the Stones, Led Zeppelin, and they were looking for somebody, and they signed me on that. And whereas I always saw myself as a much wider act, so when I recorded St Elmo's, they didn't want it. Atlantic, as big as the record was, they saw it as a betrayal, and they didn't promote it, believe it or not. Fortunately, the film made it a success.
Wow.
But
so without the film, it could have just slipped.
Like what you and I are doing now, Steve, I did all that building my name in America long before I had records out. I'd do promotion tours before I even had, just when I got a deal and no record, just meeting everybody across America, the one-stops, the DJs, everybody, that was going to help me, and made pals with them. When Naughty Naughty, my first record, came out, was a big success. When St Elmo's came out, normally you get off the plane and your record guy's there to take you to do all the radios in that town. Nobody there. So it looked like I'd got a big head, and it alienated a lot of people, because it looked like he's too big for his boots.
Right.
And that continued. They just wanted me to be a rock and roller, so I made Three Men and a Baby, I did The Running Man, all these movies that became big movies in the world, and they wouldn't release the records.
Amazing.
So it was crazy. I mean, Three Men and a Baby is the biggest movie of the year.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't release the record, and so that was one. If I'd have, so I think, well, should I have gone down that road and just nodded and betrayed myself?
Yeah.
And it cost me, but by the same token, you can only be true to yourself.
Yeah, of course.
I think,
As we go into this next track, Van Halen, Jump, is this a good moment to discuss St Elmo's Fire as well? I mean, so first of all, tell me about. I just want to discuss that song. We spoke in the lift as we were coming up, and I mentioned that I've worked in radio for something like 26 years, and I don't think there's one radio station where I haven't played your song. Wow. It works on every format, across every genre, and it seems now, and you said something interesting a moment ago, that almost it's got a new lease of life now.
Yeah, firstly, I'm moved by what you say. I'm so easy to be jaded by it, but I mean, I'm still that kid that gets off on it being played on the radio.
Yeah.
Your music, so thank you.
Do you still get excited when you
hear it? I do, indeed. I'm excited now as I'm talking. I've got a little bit of a book. So I've done a lot of stuff on English radio for many years, a lot in America. Yeah, St Elmo's, yeah. It's a strange one. Naughty Naughty was the first record. David Foster, the legendary record producer, produced everybody from Whitney Houston to Chicago to Earth, Wind and Fire, called me and said, I love Naughty Naughty. I'm making a soundtrack for film. Will you come and write a song for it with me? Went to this little studio in Los Angeles, the Lighthouse Studio. Room about the size of this, Steve. It was just a little desk in there, a Fender Rhodes keyboard, a little first generation Lindrum drum machine. And I got there and David said, look, I'm exhausted, man. I can't write another thing. And I went, just give me half an hour, let's try. He said, I'm exhausted, man. Will you sing this? And he gave me this other song, and it was an average song. I went, please, just let's have half an hour. And we went in the control room and we wrote St Elmo's in probably an hour.
No way.
No lyric. I couldn't come up with a lyric. The director came down, Joel Schumacher, to tell me that he'd written it. I couldn't get off on it. I just couldn't identify.
So you had
with
the
it.
music, but no
had
lyrics.
the music, no lyric, and St Elmo's Fire's an okay film, but it didn't register with a kid who didn't pass his 11 plus, left school at 15. This was collegiate America, silver spoon kids, and I didn't really get it. And David said, "Look, this has nothing to do with the movie," and he showed me a video cassette, like a local news broadcast, about this young boy who'd broken his back in a car accident a year earlier. And this kid said, the video comes on, and this young, beautiful looking fella, like a young Kennedy, said, you break your arm, you break your leg, you're in a plaster cast for 6-8 weeks, you break this one bone in your back and you're in a chair for the rest of your life. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to wheel my chair 50 miles a day around the world, 25,000 miles, to raise money and awareness for spinal research. And I want to make that wheelchair become a thing you see in a museum. The tour was called the Man in Motion Tour. I'm watching this thing and the hairs on the back of my neck are going up. I went back to the hotel that night and I wrote the story of a young boy wheeling around the world in a wheelchair. Yeah. But I made it fit with the movie, so they think the wheels are Demi Moore's Jeep. They think for once in his life, A Man Has His Time is when Emilio gets the girl. But it's entirely about Rick Hansen wheeling up mountains, crossing deserts for his cause. And when I sing it, I am him. Yeah. In my mind, And is that precisely the reason why the song didn't win? I read somewhere it didn't win an Oscar because I said it. Because they knew that... Yeah. The rule is it has to be written specifically, an original song for the movie. Right. And because I knew a guy in a wheelchair in the 80s is going to get no press there's no internet, nothing. Mm-hmm. And also, even the Paralympics, you never saw it on television or anything. It was not cool. It suddenly, you remember 2012, suddenly everything changed. The highlight, wasn't it? The highlight, And I've got shivers saying it now. I remember coming back to London one day and seeing a kid like in the chair, all the gear on and everything. You don't even see the chair. He just looks so cool, got the shades on, all the bit. But this young kid, this is 1985, and you see somebody in a wheelchair and you think, well, I don't want to stare, I don't want to look, or whatever. And so my life changed then. Every night I would go out on stage and tell the story of what this song's about and do the song, and it would destroy the crowd. Not only was it number one, and it was like standing ovations, even though I was an opening act. And and the rest history. We've built iCord, the world's leading research foundation for spinal research. We've raised 275 million Canadian dollars for spinal. The song's been the anthem of that cause. Yeah. What did the young man come back and say after, and is he still around? Yeah, he's still around. He's called Rick Hansen. He's just been inducted into the Canadian Natural History Museum, where the wheelchair's gone because it's all about the tour. So the wheelchair did get in the museum, but we haven't quite got people out of wheelchairs yet. Right. But yeah, I did lots of benefits. David Foster and I, we would play around America and Canada because it was a long 2 years, 2 months and 2 days it took to wheel around the world. And there was still not a lot of light on him when he got back to Canada. And he was 6 months late, so when he got back to Canada, it was the Canadian winter. We think it's cold today. It was minus 40 in Fahrenheit in Canada. So we had to raise money for a 4-wheel drive wheelchair that had changed to the front. So yeah, and Rick wouldn't. I met Rick probably 3 months after St Elmo's was released, and he wouldn't meet me sitting down. He would only meet me standing up. So he met me on crutches, and it moved me. It's something I carry with me to this day. Yeah, and he said something great, sent me a telegram about a year in. Whenever I feel I can't wheel another mile, I pull over, put the headphones on, I play the song and go out and do another 20. Wow. And that's what songs are. How does that make you feel? Well, that's bigger than hit records and everything, that's like why I did it. And, you can tell I'm emotional about it now, because it's true, it's real. Yeah. And that's what people get now, I think, even though they don't know. Why does this song do this to me? Because it's lightning in a bottle, I think, And it's true to say this was the song that changed your life, isn't it? Changed my life, yeah, completely changed my life. In all ways? In every way. Yeah, in every way. I mean, I've always tried to do my bit for people less fortunate, but certainly for the second half of my life has been mainly about, bringing light to disablement, if you like, in all its forms. And of course now, it's changed, hasn't it? Because the mental aspect of disablement has really come to the surface, And so yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'm involved with the military and in America and in England. So the last 10 years has been about PTSD and the invisible injuries.
Amazing.
And of course we see that now, not just in the military, but we see it in just accidents.
Yes.
Whatever. People can carry scars, can't they? And you think, why? I think I would say, if you see somebody in the street and they upset you, you've got to think, well, why? Just give them that minute. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they like this? Because there might be a hidden problem.
Okay, great. We must stick St Elmo's in the list. Can we do an additional one, and we'll put it in?
11.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm not
that
good
was
at,
so wonderful.
I'm not good at blowing my own trumpet.
No.
Yeah,
but if you wouldn't mind, we'll do this because poor Van Halen haven't even got a mention yet. So tell me about Van Halen. Halen jump.
Well, it just blew my mind. I mean, I have no connection at all, other than Eddie, like every guitar player. Just, it was like a parable, wasn't it? It was like, boy, oh boy, what I can remember, hearing that guitar solo, and then the stuff he did for Michael Jackson. It was revolutionary. And I used to teach kids in my spare time guitar lessons, and they'd bring records and I could usually show them how to do it. And I remember that one coming through, and of course I didn't understand what tapping was, and so I kind of stopped doing it at that point because Eddie just rewrote the map. And of course, excuse me, David Lee Roth at his peak, he was the larger-than-life frontman, wasn't he, doing the splits and all the bit in mid-air, and such a great song. You put that on and, it puts a smile on your face.
But apparently the boys were really, dead nervous to the extent of they were unsure whether to actually go ahead with the song with the use of the synthesizer.
Yeah. I think
do you think that's true?
I think totally, yeah. I think that would be very much Eddie, because Eddie's a great keyboard player too, but he was known as a guitar player. But you can always tell some of their great songs is Eddie on that keyboard player,
right?
And on the keyboards, but also the keyboard for a guitar player offers another avenue. It's when you play guitar, it's usually one hand, playing, hitting it, and the other hand playing the chord.
Yeah.
With the piano, you've got that bass note going on, and that changes everything to the top hand, and it opens a real new chapter for songwriting. And I'm sure Eddie wrote that on the keyboard, and then it developed into this.
And what is it with songs like your own, like St Elmo's Fire and this? These songs they've managed to stand the test of time, whereas so many other songs released in exactly the same, week, year, month, haven't. They seem jaded, faded, whatever. But what is it? That
was my difficulty in doing this list, because when I looked, and everybody talks about the 80s, but you struggled. I'm talking about Leviathan songs. There's probably only about 20. I mean, I'm not talking about fashion or genres, but stuff like you say that has this real afterlife. I think it was that. I think we still had the spillover of the older artists like Aretha Franklin and people that were like giants and legendary. So not only did you have the bar being pushed up by what was set in the 70s and 60s, but you also had this new breed of people that were going, these songs have got to be great. And it's not just the melody. You get people whistling the other part of the song, the little anti-melody or the little hook, like I say with Rosanna. It's like a little bit, that's a song in itself these days, but you also had... So I think it was that everybody was competing, trying to make something bigger and better. And I think it was just over time,
Brilliant. I'm so glad you put in the next song. It's one of my favourites. Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart. This is an intro that gets you, that grabs you. Tell me why you like this song.
It's one of those where you pull over, don't you, and think. I was such a fan of Trevor Horn, and indeed Naughty Naughty, my first record, I brought over JJ Jexalic, who did all the Fairlight stuff for Trevor and The Art of Noise. I just loved it. I just thought it was one of those songs that was completely outside everything else that was going off in a band that was kind of a pop rock band.
Yeah. And
suddenly Trevor Rabin came in, and Steve Howard just left, I think, and it just turned into almost like what Foreigner did with music, and Foreigner kind of brought that English American smashing together, and I think this song encapsulated that English naughty wildness of Trevor and yes.
Yeah.
I got to know Chris a little bit. Chris Squire, the late great Chris Squire. I'll tell you a funny story about Chris. I remember meeting Chris in LA, And he can't get arrested now because he sadly passed. But he was staying on the Sunset Strip. And I remember going into the room and he was so happy because he got cable TV for free in the room. And what he'd done, he'd paid a cable guy to go into the manhole cover on the street, run a cable all the way up the hotel and into Chris.
That's genius.
Brilliant. And that was Chris. He was just a lovely man. And when I hear Owner of Lonely Heart, I remember that story. It makes me smile.
Oh, it's amazing. And this is one of those songs you mentioned a while back about being multi-layered, isn't it? There's so much going on in this one track.
Well, you remember, little girl.
I mean, the first time you heard this, you're like, where's it going
Where's it going next?
Yeah.
You know, and it just was like this jigsaw puzzle that fitted together so beautifully.
Yeah, perfect.
And almost from the wrong pictures. You know, like a jigsaw puzzle but they all fitted.
Like it shouldn't work,
yes,
but it completely works.
Absolutely
100%.
Worked and lives forever.
Uh-huh.
You know, it hasn't, even though those sounds are of the 80s, it doesn't feel dated, does it?
So I thought I'd just ask you quickly about all the people you've toured with over the years, because Bryan Adams, a couple of times, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many artists. Can you tell me, you did that, I remember that one, was it the Pepsi gig that you did that was beamed around the whole world as well?
Yeah, we did that from Stringfellas, believe it or not.
Did
from
you?
the Hippodrome.
From the Hippodrome?
Yeah, it was Midge Ure and The Cure. I think it was The Cure. And it was strange because we were going to all on the college network across America and Asia. So we had to do a show at 12 o'clock and one at 6 a.m. So we were just, I'd never done anything like that in my life.
No.
I think I went to 50 million people. It was like a long time ago, you know, like 86, I think. Yeah, so there was that. Brian and I used to bump into each other in the early days, and he would try. It's funny how times change. I'd be walking, you know, in a corridor down, you know, some airport somewhere, and I'd see this guy with the hood up, and it'd be Brian. Hey, mate, what are you doing here? You know, all that. And we'd have you know, and then when he toured the world with Reckless, and then he did his return to Canada. He hadn't played Canada for a year and a half, and he said, "Would you do it with me?" And I opened for him there. I think that was about 60,000 in a baseball stadium. But Brian was cool, you know, in the days when, you know, the main act doesn't give you the full PA and you certainly can't go near the video screens.
Right.
I remember coming down, I'd got a maple leaf guitar. And Brian went, "Man, that's cool, man. You've got to be on the video screen." So straight away, I walked out and he'd give me the video screens. Well, this crowd was mine. I'd walked out with this maple leaf guitar filling, and bosh, you know.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've passed over the years, you know. Yeah, he's cool.
Are you still in touch with him now?
Yeah, see, we did a show. Yeah, he's one of the good guys, you know. Big one's Tina. We can talk about Tina later, but the big one, Tina. Roger's a biggie as well. Did Madison Square Garden with Roger Daltrey, and Yoko Ono, and Lennon's two sons with Sean and Julian. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wrote a song for Roger, Under a Raging Moon, and we did it at Madison Square Garden. It was like, can you imagine?
Wow.
It was like,
almost otherworldly.
It was like otherworldly, you know, and you know, again, I've been so blessed, you know, so lucky.
I mean, John, being such a rock legend, and you've had so many experiences, if I was to be really brutal with you and go, best gig of your life.
Best gig of my life.
Could you tell me?
I think when Rick Hansen had finished the Man in Motion tour, it was literally that day. He'd wheeled 2 years, 2 months and 2 days. He wheeled back into Vancouver. Million people lining the streets. Now, when he set off in that little video I told you about the front, there were like 3 men and a dog waving him off in a rainy day. This time there were millions of people. All the brass bands were going da-da-da-da-da-da, all the streets, everything, wheeling down. And he wheeled into the exhibition centre, 25,000 people in the middle, and David and I were in the middle. And as he wheeled in, we played St Elmo's. That was, you can imagine, that was it. That was, you know, it's funny to keep harking back to St Elmo's, but when it's such a beacon in your life, you know, and to play it to him in that moment of success, the day of success, the day of culmination.
And that was the reason why you wrote that song in the first place.
And that was the reason we'd written it in the first place.
So it must have meant so
and
much.
Nobody was there. That's the point, that nobody. And then it just shows you how, when the world knows your name, you know, he'd gone to China, he wheeled across the Great Wall of China, and then 1 million people in China lined the streets. From nothing to everything.
Wow.
I always say the power of a dream, you know, his dream and my dream, David Foster's dream, just came together. You know, and that power of a song, the power of the word, a bit of encouragement, that changes the world. And boy, do we need that now.
Yeah, there's almost a movie in this story, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a movie. There is a movie in it. You know, There's a movie in a lot of stories, though. We could look out that window and there's a man and woman thinking my story is nothing and their stories are everything, and they put no value on it. And I think that's what's wrong. It's about we, not me. And there's a lot out there that deserves to be applauded and echoed.
Just before we go into the next song, by the way, I'm loving doing this. Are you having a good time?
I'm enjoying it, but I'm mindful of running into an epilogue,
No, it's all brilliant. I'm dying to ask you about this next track, Waiting for a Starter for Boy Meets Girl. Obviously, we touched on this earlier. This is from the movie Three Men and
a Little Lady.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't realise that till recently.
That was the one that was released after.
After, yeah.
So tell me about your involvement within the, this kind
with
of
the
movie.
Disney thing.
Yeah.
Again, David Foster rang me up and he said, do you not want to do soundtracks anymore? And I went, yeah, why? He said, Carol Bayer-Sager, she's a world famous songwriter. Carol's just rang Atlantic Records. She wants you to sing this song. And they've told her you're not interested. So this was my record label deliberately trying to steer me away from it. I said, I'd love to, I want to do it. So we went to Nashville. Marvin Hamlish, Carol Bayer-Sager, David Foster, all Oscar winners, all Monty and me from Works Up.
It's kind of a pinch yourself, isn't it?
And Leonard Nimoy had directed the film, Spock from Star Trek. And I looked at the film, and the film starts with a montage of women coming in and out the doorway of these three bachelors' apartments.
Yes.
And then their life's changing with this little baby. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. Carol had written this beautiful lyric, and Marvin had written this beautiful intro, but there was nothing else. So David and I we worked for a week in Nashville. We had a ball, and we had a lot of fun, and we wrote what's become, the title track of the movie. And I remember we wrote it to fit the front of the, and this is how movies can turn upside down.
Yeah.
So we wrote it for the front of the film, and Leonard Nimoy, Spock, came in at the end and he went, before he heard it, I'm sorry guys, it's going in the end over the end credits. I'm going to use a song called Bad Boys. And no matter what argument these three Oscar winners put forward, that song was at the end of the movie. They cut it to ribbons, so it didn't even fit the same way.
Yeah.
But that's movies. But that was my involvement with Three Men. But ironically, again, Disney, when they first said it's going to be a little film, it's a remake of a French film. It's got TV actors in it, so we don't expect much from it. But, we'd like you to be involved. The rest history. It became the biggest film in Disney's history until Pirates of the Caribbean. So all those wonderful Disney films, it eclipsed. And they just thought it was a little TV actor film that they were contractually making.
That's incredible.
Nobody knows anything.
And how it works out is always a bit of a lottery, isn't it?
A lottery. It's a lottery. But I think the difference is, I just think, if you approach things with total heart and integrity, somehow it finds its legs sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened with that movie.
So you've written and performed 10 major motion pictures. That's incredible. That must be some kind of record.
We did it really quick as well. We used to call me and Phil Collins Mr. Soundtrack because we did them so fast. Phil was like, Phil and I became, we did quite a few things together, So it's similar. He was a great guy, Phil, and English, obviously, very, very, I don't know if you've interviewed Phil, but he's such a normal character.
Seems it.
Well, the Phil I knew.
Yeah.
Obviously, life's dealt him some bad blows, but he was the one person I have come across that I never expected life to do that. It's the biggest transformation I've seen.
Because
and
of
I don't
health.
know. His health, and I think life kind of did turn upside down quite a bit.
Yeah.
For him. But he's a lovely man. I had great memories of it. But yeah, we did all those movies, and it's a funny thing you say about radio. I mean, I remember St Elmo's has recently been in a couple of big films. He was in Deadpool. Was in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And so you get all these young kids that watch those movies that would never listen to the radio stations that play me. And suddenly they're like big fans because they're not going, oh, it's an old guy from the 80s. They're just going, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
And that's the acid test.
And that's something that TikTok's achieved with loads of tracks, like the Kate Bush thing recently. Yeah. Kids just think of it as a new track. You know?
There's no bias. They just go, love it.
Yeah,
love it,
amazing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a couple of questions then? The process of when it probably differs, but when a movie company or whatever, or a director comes and says, "Can you write a song for my film?"
Yeah.
Do you have to watch the film, them write the song, or do you have to know what the film's about in order to create the song? How does it work?
I prefer to just be with the director, and he can usually get it across to me. Sometimes, like with The Running Man, I sat in the movie theatre, just me and the producer, and I heard the song in my head immediately. Went to Munich and did it with Harold Faltermeyer. Bush, it was out. St Elmo fortunately didn't see the movie, and had to find another way. 3 Men and a Baby, I instantly knew it had to be this thing, what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's strange, it's different ways every time. And very often with me, songwriting comes to me not with an instrument in my hand. It's sometimes driving a car in a dream. I believe everything's God-given or universe-given. I don't take any responsibility for anything I've done at all. I'm a craftsman. I can find that diamond if it's in there, or sometimes a pebble. But I'm just a craftsman. I honestly believe it's kind of inspiration from somewhere else, and name that as you will.
God-given, for
yes,
example.
God-given. We say, don't we? It's what do they say? Gifted people. It's got to be gifted from somewhere, and you can't explain it any other way than they must be gifted. And so I'm not saying I'm gifted. I'm saying they were gifts. I think all my diamonds were gifts. That I crafted.
So you got a song from a movie that you've written. So does it matter where it's placed within the movie? That's the question I want to ask you, because you mentioned a moment ago about they've used it at the end of the film.
Yeah,
but surely that's isn't that the moment that you remember at the end?
I think what I was best at was writing the title track, because what I could usually do is encompass the whole. If you like, like when you buy a book and you see that first few lines, this is what the book's about.
Yeah.
I like to think that's what my song's about, but it's got the emotion of it in it. So I'm one of the team of horses pulling that film, as far as I can do it. So that's what I think I'm good at, walking in other people's shoes. If I'm doing stuff for a charity, I can usually, take on board the enormity of what I've been at, the honour, and I feel that with the film as well. You've got to honour. Because so many people, so much work, money, so much risk, and you just want to give it your best shot, don't you?
Did you have to turn down? Here's a question I'm dying to ask you. Any movies that just kind of got away? So either you didn't have time to do a soundtrack song, or it just didn't work, or you were asked but it didn't happen.
The biggest regret was Big, the movie Tom Hanks. Big, and of course I had the relationship with Disney and Touchstone, and Penny Marshall was directing. So even without being asked, I wrote this song called Forever's Not For Everyone. There's a great scene at the end, and if people know about Big, when Tom Hanks grows back into a man again. So this woman that he's fallen in love with as a young boy, she sees him walk across the road and he turns into a man again. And so I wrote this song called Forever's Not For Everyone with a friend of mine, and we really believed in it. It would fitted beautifully. And Penny Marshall said, I'm not using any original songs in the movie. And so that was a heartbreak, that I pitched it. I wasn't even asked, but it was probably the one song that I would think would fitted any movie I've been involved in the best. And it did, so that's kind of the one that got away. These days, I look at great movies, and they're rare, aren't they, to hear a song from a movie, a big movie. It's rare that they have the soundtrack. There's a few, but not in the way it was. And I often think, man, this could have, not necessarily me, but it would have benefited.
Do you think there could be a resurgence after, the success, for example, of Top Gun Maverick last year? Because that's a massive movie, huge soundtrack. Okay, not as big as the original from the 80s. However, that One Republic track worked a treat. Totally. Didn't it?
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting, obviously, the Lady Gaga track in that. Hans Zimmer realised how melodic that was and used it throughout the movie. And I think Tom Cruise says, he kind of credits Lady Gaga as changing. I mean, it's a wonderful movie. I mean, it's anybody who's not seen Top Gun Maverick, don't think it's just about flying, because
it's incredible,
you've missed it. If you think it's about flying,
isn't it?
The emotional content of that film, and that's it. It's like, right, I would have loved to have done that because Harold Faltermeyer did it, and of course I worked with Harold straight after Top Gun 1. I worked with him on Running Man, so we were pals. And I think we could have, not saying Lady Gaga's not brilliant, but I'd love to have had a shot at that.
Yeah.
So I felt the emotion of it so much. And it doesn't really explore that relationship between Rooster and Maverick in song. And that would be unusual because it's about two men, and it's about one man that hates another man because of something that's not true. And eventually retribution and the love. And I just think that could have been explored beautifully.
I'm dying to ask you about this next track. Kate Bush Piece of Gabriel, beautiful track.
I got a shiver when you said it. You know, it's Don't Give Up.
Yeah.
Story of my life. Don't they do it so beautifully? I wanted to use that Peter Gabriel song, the one from what's the pig movie, Babe.
Yeah.
You know, the one, That'll Do. There's a song, I love it. You know, it's got the Brighouse and Rastrick band on it. And all that. There's just something about Don't Give Up, and also Man with the Child in His Eyes of Kate's. Kate being totally unique, Peter kind of being this kind of left field extraordinary artisan that somehow can put his finger on right, being there's no difference between North and South. I've got friends from the East End and I've got friends, and there's no difference. We're the same. That's that kind of, you know, people in and out of everybody's house, and Peter seemed to capture that beautifully. And strangely, because it completely seems out of character to the Gabriel you think we know. Yeah. And yet Don't Give Up, just it's such a almost a little biblical hymn, you know, because it's so simple, but it's so beautiful. Because I would say to anybody, don't give up on your dream, don't give up on any of it, because it could be just. I could have so easily, you know, not kept writing those songs, and you know, look, a year around the corner, everything changed. Yeah, and nothing looked like it could. We were broke, and you know.
And what do you think about? I've got to ask you about Kate Bush's success in the last year. I mean, no one saw that coming.
Nobody saw it coming. And you know, but it's that thing again, isn't it? It was what she is and what she has done is so unique that it went global, didn't it? It wasn't just it's quirky Englishness. Everybody got it, you know. And I think that's what it is. She was and she was nurtured. I think as an artist, she was nurtured in the way that people aren't nurtured anymore. I know that you know, Dave Gilmour kind of championed her with EMI, and they kept her, you know, like Lewis Hamilton. They kept her driving go-karts for a bit before they put her into the Formula One. And when she went into Formula One, Bush, you know, Heathcliff. You know, I mean, how brave was that? You know, by a label to put it. You know, it's like putting Bohemian Rhapsody out, isn't it? It's like. And boy, oh boy, sometimes if you bet on it, you know, and I love that, you know, Clive Davis, you know, betting on Bridge Over Troubled Waters when everybody thought was wrong, and they become landmarks, don't they?
Yeah.
You know? And I love it when that happens, you know.
Do you think? Have you ever met her at all?
I have met Kate.
Yeah.
The guitar player from my band is actually married to Kate. We don't know each other very well, and a very embarrassing situation. My manager's called John Wolfe. Was called John Wolfe, and they got mixed up. I was doing a TV show in Paris, and we've got a big surprise for you, Kate. She was doing the show. I didn't know I was on the show. It's your old friend John. And I walk on, and Kate Bush and I meet for the first time on French television. They told her it's John Wolfe, her old pal, and it's me. And that was embarrassing. She went, well, he's my friend now. You know, it was great. It was great, but you know, publicly.
What a way to meet.
What a way to meet. Yeah.
On TV.
On TV. Yeah, it's great.
That's brilliant. Run DMC, Walk This Way.
Yeah.
Now this, I always say, you know, when people ask this song, it was a game changer, wasn't it?
Game changer.
Nobody had ever heard anything like this.
This was the beginning for me in America. So I just landed. I'd never been to America until 1983. I think this was 84. So much better than the Aerosmith original record. It was just that smashing together of two cultures. Rap was really just coming in, wasn't it? It was like that guitar riff, again, in the way Jump does it just comes on straight away. And yeah, it like carved a furrow. It carved a furrow, and I have no connection with it other than being completely blown away by the imagery of it. The guys with the dark glasses and the hats, you know, and this kind of rock and roll. It was like it had never happened before.
Do you remember the reaction it got in the States? Because it must have brought two extreme fans of totally different worlds come colliding together.
I think the clever thing was MTV was in its infancy, so you'd suddenly so you would have the hip hop fans watching it and then seeing this, because it was almost like an Aerosmith video, wasn't it? And that. And it was so cool and so hip. You really couldn't, you know, whoever came up with that idea. Well, obviously they did. They must have just covered it. And they went, hey, you know what, I'll sing it. I'll sing it again.
But it brought hip-hop to rock fans.
It brought
on
everything.
the radio. The radio started playing, hip-hop stations started playing rock-infused tracks because of it.
I think it did everybody a big favour, you know, because it went, hang on a minute, you know, we can smash it all together, and, you know, and it's just cool and exciting and fun.
Yeah.
That kind of epitomised it, didn't it?
I've got to ask you about the MTV era, because you
Yeah.
would have remembered it starting.
Very much so.
How did it change everything?
I'd always been, from being a kid, I'd always been very visually driven. All my songs are kind of cinematic. I'd love that. So when we were making videos, I straight away thought, well, I want to make films. So all my videos are shot 35mm Panavision. I'm still paying for them all these years later. But yeah, I mean so a lot of artists say they killed it. I hate making videos. Henley said, I hate making videos, and yet Boys of Summer, the videos, Boys of Summer is so retro.
You remember that
the little boy
immediately.
playing the kit
Yeah.
and all the bit, and that Spirit of America driving down the highway, the beautiful girl, the sunglasses, all the bit. I think done properly, they become as memorable as the song. There are a few, aren't there, that you just remember. You can close your eyes, you can see it as well as hear the song. So I think that's what MTV did, and also nobody knew what they were doing. It was a bit like early radio, and it's like with Virgin, isn't it? When Virgin kind of said we're gonna do this with radio, and everybody went, oh no, there's these main channels and all that, which we love, but you can. It's a broader landscape, and you can.
Yeah.
And America to me was like that. Radio in the 80s was very exciting. You'd get one radio station in the town slagging the other one off. It was all that kind of banter. It was just really great. And then the videos would come, and you'd get the same thing. So you'd get all this irreverence and and DJs that were used to not being seen suddenly being on air, and their personalities. And some of those guys are still famous, aren't they, now, from that time?
Yeah.
They become legendary because they were cool, and they were passionate about. And that, when you got to see they were passionate as well to hear it, it worked,
Yeah. And for someone who really cared about music videos, what's your favourite? What's the best 80s video of all time?
That's so hard, isn't it?
I had to ask.
I mean, I tell you what I thought was really clever. The Godly Creme, I don't know if they did Take On Me, the Aha, the drawing.
Yeah.
Because he looks like a car, in the best way possible. He looks like a kid you would draw.
Yeah.
And that captured it, and turning from that into... So that's really memorable. I remember the Michael Jackson one where the faces morphed. Do you remember that
Black
one?
or white?
Black or white.
That's incredible, isn't it?
That really, those kind of landmark... Obviously, you can't go without saying Bohemian Rhapsody because, as primitive as that was, a line to the song. And I've seen... There's recent documentaries about how they made it. And, so kind of Heath Robinson, wasn't it, how they did it? But, that kind of pyramid and the reflective video of it just bouncing back.
But it was a first, and nobody had seen anything like
that. I worked with Mike Mansfield a bit. Do you remember? You probably before your time, Lift Off, and he was like a revolutionary TV director that was our version of MTV. And it was it was great times. Early,
I bet.
Early days of it.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Amazing. We got to the final track. Tell me everything about Tina Turner, please. I'm just going to be quiet and listen to you.
Well, I got a phone call. It sounds like I'm always in LA, but I was in LA. Another funny mix-up. Phone rings, and it's Roger Davis, Tina's long-time manager, who changed her life and her career. Wonderful person, Australian. John, it's Roger. It's me. I picked the phone up. Tina's on the tour bus. She's just heard St Elmo's fire, and she said, I've got to have this guy for the tour. I went, I think you're speaking to John Wolfe, don't you? And he goes, yeah. I went, no, it's John. He said, well, take on board what I said, get me John. And the rest of it. So I went a week later. Tina was playing Madison Square Garden. I met her for the first time there. I watched the show. I think Glenn Fry was opening for her on the East Coast. She was lovely. Right, I want you to do the tour from the West to LA with me. So I did 40 shows with Tina. In the midst of that, St Elmo's went number 1. We Don't Need Another Hero didn't make it to number 1, got to number 2. So I was touring with the biggest star in the world on the
and you
Pepsi
were number
thing.
1.
I was number 1. And Tina was number 2. We had a great picture of. She wrote on a blackboard, John Parr number 1, Tina Turner number 2, John Parr, you're fired. I used to. I did 40 shows. I used to do my opening show, get changed, wait for the lights to go down, and then go out and watch Tina. So I saw 40 shows at the Near the Master.
Right.
I've seen Tina go on with nosebleeds and pack her nose. I've seen her go on when she's been less than well. She's a lady that never saw a family that whole tour. She felt that she needed all her energy just to, because she was, I think, probably 50 then, or late 40s. So she would literally do the show, meet all the Pepsi people because they were doing the thing. So that's tough in itself. You're doing an hour of every night, meet the corporate sponsor, do a show, go back to the hotel until the next day. And that was a lesson for me, on stage and off stage. A wonderful, wonderful person, the like of which we'll never see again. And it's electric, isn't it? You know, she's old school. It's from that old throwback that, again, you know, she's trying to shake off River. Oh, yeah, she used to sing River Deep, Mountain High. And 3 months before I met her, she was doing holiday inns with a band, travelling in the band, honouring corporate gigs that she was old Tina Turner.
Wow, so she's a proper grafter.
She's a proper grafter. So she went literally from holiday inns to 3 months later doing arenas. And that's why they booked me for the show, because they needed to sell that last few thousand tickets. But by the time I was on, you couldn't get a ticket. I didn't need to be there. So I was very lucky. But I mean, that was the tour. That was your Private Dancer with Tina at her peak, 40 shows. Oh,
gosh.
It was amazing.
What was she like? Because she had been through so much heartache, disappointment, bad times, hard times. What kind of person?
I didn't know at that point just how bad it was, and I wish I did. But I still think of it now. I said something quite forward to her early on. We were going out for a meal, me and her people, and I said to her just quietly, "You don't have to be Tina around me." I just wanted to kind of break the ice, and because I knew she always saw herself as the person she is, and Tina. She would look and go, "She's doing that." She would see herself as something else. Something inside me wanted to kind of connect, and I realise now when I've looked at What's Love Got to Do with It, I know the full story. Something inside me wanted to go, you know what, I could be a pal.
Yeah, you reached
out. Simple
out.
as that. And you know, most people I've worked with long term are my friends, not my friends because they're famous. And I felt that with her. Never came to fruition. She was always very supportive of me. She gave me loads of advice. She was always very generous to me. But what's she like? She was obviously. Roger was with her every day. That's the other thing. You would never see a manager travel with an artist everywhere. And where, even in later times, if I saw Tina, Roger would be there. He was with her every step. And I think probably she needed that kind of support. So I do like that partnership. But yeah, I think she is just a true blue, and somebody that I remember getting tickets for a Tina show. Sent me tickets probably 10 years after. And there were only two. I gave them to my two sons. They were 17 and 19. I said, just go to this show. And at 17 and 19, going to see somebody not really, they both came back because I had never seen anything like that in my life. And that summed it up. That incandescence of what she could do. Not frightened of having the best dancers, the best singers or whatever, because Tina could eclipse anybody. So that's what my memory.
Was it nerve-wracking warming up for her, performing in front of her?
No, I felt totally comfortable. St Elmo's was number one, which was a big help when I was with. But then again, I only play at the end of the show, so this audience has got this guy they don't know. And by the end, they go, "Oh yeah, it's him," you know.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't know, you know, unless they were fans of Naughty Naughty or whatever.
Yeah.
I was playing my album, but I'd had 40 years. Well, no, not at that point. I had 20 years of playing those clubs.
Yeah.
And if you can survive in those clubs I came in, you can play anywhere. And so I just used all that stagecraft I'd learned as a kid, you know,
yeah,
and
amazing.
pulled it all into action.
Can you give me a bit of advice that she gave you? You know, you said that she spoke to you occasionally.
Yeah. I remember rarely happened to me. I lost my voice completely this day. Knocked on the door. I said, and I had to mouth, you know, I've got a show to do and I can't do it. And she went, Jack, she was calling me Jack, first thing you got to do is stop doing this. Well, I used to do this thing that Gillan did with the approach to go, yes, big thing. And the audience said, do it, you go crazy. And she imitated me doing it. She said, first of all, Jack, you got to stop doing that. And then she said, you got to do this. You get some port, you heat it up, and you gargle with it. You You don't drink it, Jack. You just gargle with it. And so I'd gargle with the port. You spit it out, and all the gunk in your neck comes out. And I went out and I got the show. So and I've carried it with me, and that's my Tina. You know, the gargle with port, and it works. I've learned in years past it's an opera singer's trick. But I didn't know, but she told me. So that must have been an old thing from the Apollo days and all that kind of Tamla Motown days.
That's amazing.
What the guys, because they really screamed, didn't they, in those days? So that was the thing, yeah. So yeah, you singers out there really struggling, gargle with hot port, don't you swallow it, and you'll be okay.
And out of all the Tina Turner songs you picked, We Don't Need Another Hero. Yeah. Why this one? Just to wrap up.
Oh boy. But why? I could have picked 1,000. Because it was in the 80s. I would have probably gone River Deep May.
Yeah.
But I think she transcended into acting. She did great. She was in Thunderdome. It was such a great song.
And the kids in this as well.
Yeah, and done. In England. My buddy played drums on it. Played hi-hat on it. Yeah, can you believe it? It was the drum machine and hi-hat, real hi-hat. But yeah, she cracks it. She just does it because it's kind of smokes a bit, and then she just does a Tina on it.
Yeah, you just don't want it to end.
You don't want it to end, and you go, oh yeah, it's a good song, and then you put it on, you think, I forgot how great it is,
Yeah.
Yeah, it just summed everything up, and yeah, what a way to close,
John Parr, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. You're the loveliest guy I've met doing this.
Thank you so much.
So talented. And we play your song day in, day out, and it's an absolute pleasure to play it and to meet you.
Well, we've had a great time, haven't we? Sitting on the top of the world here, looking down at London, looking lovely. And I've had a few goosebumps today. I've really genuinely enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thanks, John.